The 1st of October 1899, Volume 2. Jesus speaks with bitterness about the abuses of the sacraments. This morning, lovable Jesus continued to make himself seen in silence, but with a most afflicted appearance. He had a thick crown of thorns driven onto his head. I felt my interior powers silent, and I did not dare to say a single word. But in seeing that he suffered very much in his head, I stretched out my hands and very carefully removed the crown of thorns. Oh, what a bitter spasm he suffered! How his wounds opened more and his blood poured out in torrents. In truth, it was something that tortured the soul. After I removed it, I placed it on my head, and he himself helped, so that it might penetrate inside. However, everything was silence on both parts. But what was my surprise when after a little while I went about looking at him again, and I saw that with their offences, creatures were putting another crown on the head of Jesus. Oh, human perfidy! Oh, incomparable patience of Jesus! How great you are! And Jesus kept silent and almost did not look at them, so as not to know who his offenders were. Again I removed it, and as all my interior powers woke up with tender compassion, I said to him, "My dear good, my sweet life, tell me a little bit. Why do you no longer tell me anything? You have never been used to hiding your secrets from me. Oh, please, let us speak together a little, for in this way we will pour out a little bit the sorrow and the love that oppresses us." And he, "My daughter, you are the relief for my pains. However, know that I do not tell you anything because you always force me not to chastise the people. You want to oppose my justice, and if I do not do as you want, you remain disappointed, and I feel more pain for not keeping you content. Therefore, in order to avoid displeasures on both our parts, I keep silent. And I, my good Jesus, have you perhaps forgotten that you yourself suffer after you have made use of my justice? It is seeing you suffer in the creatures themselves that makes me more than ever alert in forcing you not to chastise the people. And then seeing the creatures themselves turning against you, like many poisonous vipers, such that they would almost take your life if it were in their power, because they see themselves under your scourges, and they irritate your justice even more. I don't have the heart to say fiat voluntas tuae. And he, my justice can take no more. I feel wounded by everyone, by priests, by devout people, by the secular, especially because of the abuse of the sacraments. Some do not care about them at all, adding despisers. Others who attend them turn them into a conversation for their own pleasure, and others, not satisfied in their whims, because of this reach the point of offending me. Oh, how tortured my heart is in seeing the sacraments reduced to painted pictures, or like those statues of stone, which seem to be alive and operating from afar, but as one draws near them, one begins to discover the deceit. Then one goes about touching them, and what does he find? Paper, stone, wood, inanimate objects. And here is how they are disillusioned completely. This is how the sacraments have been reduced for the most part. There is nothing but mere appearance. What to say then about those who remain more filthy than clean? And then the spirit of interest that reigns among the religious. It is something to be wept over. Don't you think that they are all eyes where there is a most wretched penny, to the point of degrading their dignity? But where there is no interest, they have no hands nor feet to move a tiny bit. This spirit of interest fills their interior so much that it overflows outside, to the point that the secular themselves feel the stench of it, are scandalized by it, and this causes them to give no credence to their words. Ah, yes, no one spares me. There are some who offend me directly, and some who, though they could prevent so much evil, do not bother doing it. So I do not know to whom to turn. But I will chastise them in such a way as to render them incapable, and some I will destroy completely. They will reach such a point that churches will remain deserted, with no one to administer the sacraments. Interrupting him, Ephraim, I said, Lord, what are you saying? If there are some who abuse the sacraments, there are also many good daughters who receive them with the due dispositions, and who would suffer very much if they could not attend them. And he, too scarce is their number, and then their pain for not being able to receive them will work as reparation for me, and to make them victims for those who abuse them. Who can say how tormented I was left by these words of blessed Jesus? But I hope that he will placate himself out of his infinite mercy. End of the reading.
The 1st of October, 1909, Volume 9. Jesus counts, weighs, and measures everything in the soul, so that nothing may be lost, and she may be repaid for everything. Being very afflicted because of my poor state, I felt nauseating to myself and abominable before God. I felt as if the Lord had left me halfway on the path, and without him I feel I cannot go on any further. I feel he no longer wants to use me in order to spare the world the chastisements, and so he has moved crosses and thorns away from me. He has discontinued all my sharing in his passion, the communications. The only thing I see is that he is on the alert so that I remain at peace. My God, what pain. If you yourself did not keep me distracted from these losses of crosses, of you, and of everything, I would die of grief. If it wasn't for your holy will, into what sea of troubles I would have fallen. Oh, keep me always in your holy will. This is enough for me. Now, as I was in my usual state, I was crying and saying to myself, good Jesus has taken me into no account, nor the years of bed, nor the sacrifices, nothing. Otherwise he would not have left me. And I cried and cried. At that moment, I felt him move in my interior, and I lost consciousness. But also outside of myself, I kept crying. Then, as if a door had opened in my interior, I saw Jesus. I felt huffy, and I did not say anything to him. I just kept crying. Jesus told me, calm yourself, do not cry. If you cry, I feel my heart touched and I faint with love for you. Do you want to increase my pains because of your love? Then, assuming a majestic air as though sitting on a throne within my heart, he seemed to hold a pen in his hand and to write. And turning to me, he said, see whether I do not take your things into account, not only the years of bed, the sacrifices, but even the thoughts you have for me. I am writing your affections, your desires, everything, even that which you would want to do or to suffer, but you don't because I do not concede it to you. I count, weigh, and measure everything, so that nothing may be lost and you may be repaid for everything. And as I write it, I keep it in my own heart. Then, I don't know how, I found myself in Jesus, while before I was in my interior. It seemed that the head of Jesus was in the place of my head, and all of my members served as his body. And he repeated, see how I keep you? Like the members of my own body. And he disappeared. After a little while, as I continued to be afflicted, bursting into crying every so often, Jesus came back and told me, my daughter, courage, I have not left you. Rather, I am hidden, because if I let myself be seen as before, you would bind me everywhere, and I would not be able to chastise the world in anything. Nor have I left you halfway on the path. Don't you remember what these last years of your life are? These are the years wanted by your confessor. Don't you remember that not once, but as many as 4 or 5 times you found yourself fighting with me? I wanted to take you with me, and you would tell me that obedience did not want it. And while I had prepared you in order to take you with me, I was forced to leave you again. Now look at the consequences you are bearing. These are years of pause and of patience. Charity and obedience have their own thorns, which open large wounds and make the heart bleed. But they make the most ruby red, fragrant, and beautiful roses bloom. In fact, in seeing in your confessor the fruit of his goodwill and charity, and fear that the world might be chastised, because of this I somehow concurred with him. And if I had not found anyone who would pray with me and interpose himself, you would certainly not be here. But come, courage. The exile will not be too long after all, and I promise you that the day will come when I will not let myself be won over by anyone. Who can tell in what bitternesses I swim? Comforted, yes, but embittered down to the marrow of my bones. I cannot remember this without crying, so much so that in telling it to the confessor, the heat of my tears was such that it seemed I would get upset with him. And I truly said to him, "You have been the cause of my troubles." End of the reading.
The 1st of October 1910, Volume 9. Love for Jesus forms the transformation of the soul in him. Having received communion, I felt all transformed in Blessed Jesus, and I said to myself, how can one maintain this transformation with Jesus? And in my interior it seems that Jesus was saying, my daughter, if you want to be always transformed in me, even more to be one single thing with me, love me always, and you will maintain your transformation with me. In fact, love is fire, and whatever woods are thrown into the fire, small or big, green or dry, they all take the form of fire and convert into fire itself. And after these woods have been burned, one can no longer discern which wood was one and which another, neither the green one nor the dry one. One can see nothing but fire. The same when the soul never ceases to love me. Love is fire that transmutes the soul in God. Love unites, its flames invest all of the human operations and give them the form of the divine operations. End of the reading.
The 1st of October, 1925, Volume 18. The divine will is the centre of the humanity of our Lord. One who lives in it lives in this centre. I was accompanying the pains of the passion of my sweet Jesus according to my usual way, and I offered the very privation of him and the torture it caused me as attestation of my sorrowful love for his relief and as compassion for his pains. And while I was doing this, my beloved good moved one arm within my interior, raising his right hand and letting rivulets of blood and of light flow from his fingers over my poor soul, which was withered and burnt by the powerful blowing of his privation, and with sadness that Jesus himself was shaken. And moved to compassion, wanting to cheer me, he said to me, my daughter, courage, do not fear. One who lives in my will is in the centre of my humanity, because the divine will is in me like the sun within its sphere. Even though the rays invade the earth, it never departs from up high, from its centre. It remains always encircled within its sphere, in its majestic throne. And while its light reaches everywhere, dominating everything, everything serves as its footstool, as all await its beneficial light. So is my divine will within me, like centre in the sphere of my humanity. And from my sphere started the light, reaching everyone and every place. This had been the first act of man, to reject my supreme will. Therefore it was appropriate for my humanity to take the first step toward it, centralizing this eternal will within me as centre of life, and bringing it to man once again through my life, my works and pains, so that he might return to his Creator, placing himself in the order for which he had been created. Do you see then, my daughter? The soul who lives in my will is in the centre of my humanity, and everything I did and suffered is all around her and for her help. If she is weak, it administers to her my strength. If shaded, my blood washes her and embellishes her. My prayers sustain her. My arms hold her tightly and cover her with my works. In sum, everything is for her defense and help. This is why the thought of my pains is as though natural in you, because since you live in my will, they surround you like many clouds of light and of grace. Within the sphere of my humanity, my will placed my works, my steps, my words, my blood, my wounds, my pains, and everything I did, as though on the way, in order to call man and give him sufficient aids and means to save him and to make him come back again into the womb of my will. If my will had wanted to enter the field on its own in order to call man, he would have been frightened. Instead, I wanted to call him with everything I did and suffered, like many enticements, pushes, encouragements, and means to make him return into my arms. So everything I did and suffered is the carrier of man to God. Now, one who lives in my will, by living in the center of my humanity, takes all the fruits of everything I did and suffered and enters the order of creation. And my will fulfills in him the full purpose for which he was created. Others then, who do not live in my will, find the means to be saved, but do not enjoy all the fruits of creation and of redemption. Now, while my lovable Jesus was saying this, I said to him, "My love, I don't know. You tell me that I live in your will, and then you leave me. Ah, what a hard martyrdom you make me go through. As you leave me, everything changes for me. I myself no longer recognize myself. Everything dies for me. The light dies, the love, the good. You alone maintain the beating of life in my poor soul. As soon as you depart and leave me, everything dies. See then in what hard and painful conditions you leave me. Oh, please, have pity on me and do not leave me any more, for I can take no more." And while I wanted to say more, my Jesus, sighing, added, "My daughter, be quiet. Do not go any further. Your words wound my heart. Oh, how I would like to remove from your heart this nail so hard that I might leave you. I too know that for one who loves me, this nail is unbearable. It kills one continuously without pity. Therefore, lay down the thought that I might leave you. You should be convinced that instead of leaving you, I penetrate more deeply into you, and I remain silent in the little ship of your soul. And this is so true that nothing has moved within you. The preparations that were there are still there. They are all in the order, so much so that it is enough for my will to want it, and I give a little spin to the preparations which are there, and quickly I'm with you. And besides, how can I leave you? One who does my will and lives in it maintains whole the bonds of creation which exist between creator and creature, the bonds of redemption, and the bonds between the sanctifier and the ones who are being sanctified. My will seals all these bonds and renders the creature inseparable from me. Therefore, be sure that your Jesus does not leave you." Now, while he was saying this, I saw as though many threads of light bound to my heart. Some of them were bound to all the created things. Other threads of light were coming out from all that Jesus had done and suffered. Others from the sacraments. May everything be for the glory of God and for the good of my soul and of all souls. Amen. End of the reading.
The 1st of October 1933, Volume 32. Enchanting scenes that Jesus enjoys in the soul who lives in his will. Continuous call that God and the creature make. The divine volition never leaves me. It seems to me that it is always inside and outside of me, as in act of surprising me, because it wants to place its act in everything that I do. If I pray, if I suffer, if I labour, and even if I sleep, it wants to give me its divine rest in my sleep. It always wants to give itself something to do, and in everything it calls me by telling me, let me descend into the depth of all your acts, and I will make you rise into the heights of my act. We will compete, you to ascend, and I to descend. But who can say what the divine will made felt in my soul? Its excessive love, its condescension, its continuous occupying itself over my poor soul. But while I found myself under the empire of the divine volition, re-pouring itself over me, my highest good Jesus, surprising me, told me, my good daughter, there is no scene that moves me and enraptures me more than to see the human littleness under the empire of my will. The divine in the human, the great in the littleness, the strong in the weak, that hiding in each other conquer each other in turn. It is so beautiful, so enchanting, that I find the pure joys, the divine happiness that the creature can give me, even though I see that she brings my same will to me in hand, and she brings it to me by means of the channel of the human will. If you knew how much this delights me, in order to please me, you would let yourself always be conquered by my will. I can say that I leave heaven while I remain in order to come to enjoy the pure joys that my divine will knows how to give me in the little circle of the creature on earth. You must know that one who does my divine will and lets life flow in her acts continuously calls God and all his attributes. God hears himself always called by the creature. Now she calls him because she wants his power. Now she wants his love. Now because she wants his sanctity, his light, his goodness, his imperturbable peace. In sum, she remains always calling him because she wants of his, and God always remains waiting for her in order to give what she asks. And in order to exchange her, he feels called and he calls her, in order to show trust to her and tell her, what else do you want of my divine being? Take what you want. Rather, as you call me, I already prepare for you my power, my love, my light, my sanctity. In fact, God calls the soul and the soul calls God, and this always calling each other in order to ask and receive, and God in order to give, forms the life of my will in the creature. It matures her and makes her grow, and forms the sweet enchantment of her Creator himself. One continuous act encloses such power that God does not know how to unbind himself from the creature, nor she from God. Rather, they feel the irresistible need of remaining bound with each other. And only my will knows how to produce these continuous acts that never cease and form the true character of living in my will. On the other hand, a changeable character, a broken work, is the true sign of living of human volition that does not know how to give either firmness or peace, and does not know how to produce anything other than thorns and bitternesses. End of the reading. There are no more readings today. Have a blessed day.